What's going on, guys? My name is Burgz, and footy is just around the corner. And here on The Casual Athlete, we talk nothing but footy. And joining me today for our ladder predictions, as we do every single year, is my good friend and fantasy expert, Longy. Longy, mate, how are you?
Mate, it's good to be here. Good to talk footy in the preseason. Manly got a massive win this weekend, so I might have to move down up my ladder here.
Now, we've got some very interesting predictions coming up this year. A lot of teams might be changing positions, or are we going to see a bit of a return to the norm? I think you and I might fall either side of the fence, but let's take a look at how today is going to run, guys. Obviously, Longy and I have our own ladder predictions. Yes, we may not think the same, but do not try to, have a go at us in the comments. This is just our personal opinions. And, we try to back different teams each and every year. And I'm sure Longy might have an interest in where the Parramatta Eels end up for me.
You can have a go at me in the comments if you want, because my number one pick is insane. And don't skip to the end now. People are going to freak out. That's all I'm going to say. So let's get into it, man.
Let's get into it, man. First, we're going to be starting off with the first five teams and then moving our way up the ladder as we go. But down at the bottom of the ladder this year, I am so sorry to say, guys, we collectively, Longy, looks like we don't believe in the Dogs, the Tigers, and the Dragons. Thoughts on those three teams to begin with?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, look, the Tigers, I thought that the forward pack improvements last year would have gotten them up the ladder a bit last year. It didn't work out. So I come into this year a bit of a burnt pessimist on them. For the Tigers, I'd love to see them do better, and I just think it's going to be the year after. So I think in 2025, I might put them in 11th or 10th, or even maybe their legendary 9th spot. But for this year, it's not great. And the Dragons, I put them in the same category. I'll let you speak on those two teams in a sec too. But for St. George, I know not enough is changing for me. I just look at that team and I go, all right, you might move Lomax to the wing. You know, there are some young guys that are getting better, I guess. The forward pack feels like it's degrading a bit to me. So I sort of look through and think I just don't see enough to move them up, especially with how good some of the teams above them are going.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you on St. George. That's why I've put him at the bottom, right? Yeah, I just don't see. While they do have a pretty easy schedule this year, which may play into them probably not finishing in that 17th spot. I think a lot of people had them there last year as well. So I just think it's time for the Dragons to hit rock bottom and then rise up. Kind of like the Tigers have been doing for the last couple of years. I want to believe in the Tigers as well, but they let go of Luke Brooks, and he was half the reason that they were winning some games last year. Yes, they've got Appy Coruscant and things like that, but I just think that the halves for them are going to be way too inexperienced and not going to be able to carry them anywhere. I like the look of their forward pack and the outside backs. They're getting rid of Norfoluma, who you and I both have a bit of a penchant for. We've said multiple times previously that Norfoluma carries that team on the back of kick returns, makes a lot of meters, that kind of thing. But
he was that guy. He was that guy. He was Brian Turr before Brian Turr was Brian Turr. And he looked so good in a team that was pretty badly beaten for a lot of his career. Look, it sounds like it was a pretty mutual breakup. I hope he lands somewhere good. He might go overseas potentially. It's a tough one for him. So I mean, you've got the Raiders next, and I think you're sitting where most people are about on the Raiders. Is it just the Jack Whiten effect there? Is there anything else that you're looking at?
Oh yeah, massive loss. Jack Whiten leaving. When any star player leaves a club, they're going to leave a massive hole that's going to be taking potentially years to replace. I mean, I've seen it at the Cowboys. We lost Jonathan Thurston, and when you lose a player of that caliber, you go through a couple of years where it's going to take some time to rebuild it back. They do have a very strong forward pack, so I don't think they'll be finishing quite at the bottom of the table, but they're just going to not score enough points for me. I just don't see where the attack's coming from, and it's going to be left to a bunch of inexperienced and younger guys who are going to have to try and get them over the line each and every week. And I don't see it eventuating for them.
It's a big call. See, for mine, I think they're underrated right now. So you lose Jack Whiten, that's a big loss. But forward pack's fantastic. Zach Hosking comes in. He's pretty explosive. Got guys like him and Hudson Young on the edges there. And then you've got Seb Chris probably playing center again this year. Tomoko as well. There are just some guys, even their middle forwards, they're guys who can crack the line open and do some damage. So I look at it and I think, all right, we just need Savage or Chevy Stewart or KO Weeks, or they've got a lot of these sorts of guys. One of those guys to come out and be relatively effective against the weaker teams for them to move up the ladder. So for that reason, I sort of go, yeah, 13th place, a little bit higher. They were 8th last year. Probably didn't deserve to be 8th. If
No,
we're being honest.
they didn't, did they?
Yeah, but it's still a drop off to 13th. I think 15th is a bit too far. The Dogs, on the other hand, in 15th. So they're a team that I'm kind of just waiting. I'm waiting for that to click there. I wanted to put them higher. I really did want to put them higher.
Yeah.
It's just so hard because the teams in this next section are so good. And there are teams there that could easily be in the 8. And for the Dogs, I just think it's a bit of a bridge too far to push them into that top 8 conversation. They could get there, though. If Sexton comes in and he dominates at 7, Burton plays 6, is Crichton going to play fullback? That will take a year for him to evolve. Like you saw Latrell go to the Chooks. So I go from the Chooks to the Bunnies and go to fullback. And it took him a year to really sort of look like he was comfortable in that spot. So I think it's going to be a bit of a learning year this year. I think the Dogs will skyrocket up next year, but this year could be a bit tougher.
Yeah, I think with the Dogs as well, they have an extremely tough schedule on their hands. They play 13 games against top 8 teams from last year as well. So that doesn't help with a developing team that Serraldo is going to have to look after there. But I do see that the Dogs got a bit better. That's why they moved probably one spot up on the ladder for me. So that's why they're at the 14th spot. But the two enigmas in our bottom 5 is you have the Dolphins finishing in 5th. In the bottom 5, and then I have possibly a bit of a risky decision. I've gone the Newcastle Knights, the live wires from last year. Thoughts on the Dolphins first? Why do you think they're finishing in the bottom 5 this year?
Yeah, I didn't want to do it. So last year I was super loud about the fact that I thought they'd come out strong. They had some experience. Bennett was a good coach. They'd sort of show people up, and they wouldn't be that wooden spoon team everyone had them as. This year, I think the back half of last year was really rough to watch for them. Trying some good recruits though. So Flegler and Farmworth are fantastic recruits, but I just sort of look at them and go, I don't know. I think last year they were really excited. They were that new club. People have had time to prepare. I need to see a bit more from Isaiah Katoa, to be completely transparent. Because right now I'm looking at him and he looked like a rookie last year, which fair enough, he was a rookie, but I sort of look at that. I look at Hamaso was playing center down the stretch last year, so they obviously don't fully believe in that fullback vision. It just looks a little bit murky for me. So I just think there's going to be some of that drop off again, and they're not going to be able to catch anyone by surprise this year. For the Knights, though, I'll chuck the Knights to you because the Knights were the best team in the comp for about 8 weeks. Are they just going to forget that now? Is it the Dom Young loss? Like, what are you thinking there?
No, it's not a Dom Young loss. I just think there's so many guys in that team that overperformed last year. I just think that guys like Phoenix Crossland, who caught fire for 6 weeks, and you got Bradman Best, who played Origin, and guys who you didn't expect to do anything, stepped up and they did well. And Kalen Ponga was playing out of his mind. Did he deserve the Dally M? No, but go watch our end of season awards for that one.
Sean Johnson.
What we thought about that one. But yeah, I just think it's a bit of a return to I can't see the Knights doing it on a consistent basis. I just think that last year is more of a one-off than the norm for me. It's not really like they're gonna come 5th every single year after that. And now they've set a standard, and I don't think they're going to meet that. I just think also Kalen Pong is one head knock away from being out for the season. If they lose him, then they are definitely finishing in that bottom 4. Not saying that I want it to happen because I love watching Kalen Ponga play. I just think that the Knights across the board, there's no real star talent there, and they have a couple of guys moving into positions this year that weren't there last year. Brayley comes back. I think Lucas may be the other guy with Fitzgibbon leaving. So that changes a few things for Ponga on that left edge. But, they've got to have their guys on the field. I mean, I love Greg Marzio as well. We love Big Greggy on this show. So that's always good. But,
they got him basically for free. Greg Marzio too. Like, he's a freak. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, Kai Pierce-Paul is really interesting at the Knights for me. I think you have the potential with him to have Kai Pierce-Paul and Frizzell as your 2 back rowers, and that's dangerous in my eyes. That's pretty explosive. But it could be anything for the Knights this year.
Super young though. He might take a year to develop with Super League experience. So he's obviously come over here to try and play in the best competition in the world. So you want to see him do well. Let's move on though to the guys who we think are just missing the 8. The teams that are going to be in the hunt most of the year, but unfortunately are going to miss out. And you and I have a few very interesting differences here.
Okay, so
you have the Knights.
It is disgusting who you've got there. The Warriors and the Eels. Mate.
Yep.
Mate, I am mortified. There it is. My Parramatta 01 jersey behind me. One of our many grand final failures. And maybe we're set for another grand final failure on this year. But so Warriors and Eels, what are you thinking there?
For me, I understand that the Parramatta Eels had a lot not go their way last year. But I think that the NRL has also not done them many favours this year and has put them on the most 5-day turnarounds this year, which doesn't help. And they also play the most teams coming off a bye this year. So Para are going to be coming up against some pretty rested and ready teams, which isn't going to help them. Plus, I think that the Luai Cleary experiment with Origin is done. I think Maguire will have a different approach. And I expect to see Mitch Moses playing Origin, which could hamper the Eels very... it could really disrupt their season. I think Mitch Moses is due to have a good year, but if he gets selected for Origin, playing good footy, then he's playing those really extra high effort games that he probably hasn't had to in the past. And there's a lot of things that need to go your way to make it. I just don't see it happening again. I want to believe in Paris so much. I know you do too, but they just let me down, and I'm bringing you back to earth. All right. Sometimes you're trying to shoot into the stratosphere, and I gotta pull you down a little bit.
Well, I do believe that's why they're not on my list yet. But look, I'll run through some of mine here because the Knights, I've got them right there. So we weren't that different on them. Look, a few I'll point out here as big potential improvers. So the Sea Eagles first. I look at them and I just think Luke Brooks at 6 is a very dynamic addition to that team. So you've had DCE and you've had Turbo for quite a while. Lockie Croker, he's a first-grade hooker. But they've had guys like Cooper Johns, guys like Jacob Arthur, Schuster was in there for a bit. Just all these sort of enigmatic players who weren't as influential as a Luke Brooks in that 6th spot. So you throw him in, and we saw it in that trial game today, admittedly against reserve graders. But Luke Brooks is making Ben Trbojevic look like prime Steve Menzies. So I just look at that and go, right, Manly will be dynamic. DCE is going to be freed up a bit more to be a little bit more creative and play his sort of style of footy. And they could easily slide up the list. I can see you've got them in the top 8. I can't really argue with that. I'll let you talk about them when we get into the top 8, but they're a team that could easily rise. They just didn't make the cut for me. Another one there is the Titans.
Well, one thing for me is, we both have the Titans there, so we don't really see them. But I actually wanted to maybe skip the Titans really quickly. And you've gone with the Sharks not making the 8. Can you give me an insight into why that is? Do you not believe in the Sharks at all?
So the Sharks will eventually have to play some first-grade top 8 sides. And look, they've had a really nice run the last few years that sort of brought them in. I just sort of look at them and think, they're a little bit of a liability in defense. They've got some additions coming through in the next couple of years that will be good, but I don't love it. I just think they've kind of played at their peak a little bit the last few years and not been that impressive. They can maybe make that leap, but I look at it and I just think they might have a tougher year this year. And really, it's some of those teams in that 5 to 8 section are really strong teams. So they could easily make it, but for me, they're a little bit soft against the top 8 teams to have in there.
Yeah, well, they don't have to play that many top 8 teams from last year, so that's good for them. They only have 9 matches against top 8 teams from last year as well, so they actually have one of the easiest schedules in the league for potentially the 3rd year in a row, but I won't go into that. That's a personal gripe.
That's probably the best thing about them right now. I do want to talk about the Titans, though, right? Because Titans, you get Desi Hasler in there, right? So you go Hasler, you get Bo Firma back as well. You've got a few young guys like Jaden Campbell coming in. He's a bit more experienced now. Cam Pereira, what a freak! Like, I look at them and I go, I'd love in a weaker season, I would have thrown the Titans into the top 8. Couldn't do it this year, just with who we've got in that fringe 8. But I look at them and I go, yeah, Titans could easily be that team that comes out this year and they're just super dynamic. Campbell is dominant. Brimson at center. I think that's an experiment that's going to work. Like, I'm very positive on the Titans this year.
Yeah, I just don't think the halves are as dynamic as you're talking about. I know Kieran Foran's experienced, played a lot with Des Hasler, but last year was probably one of the better years of Kieran's career where he's gone away from Manly and actually done pretty well. Made David Fafita look pretty good last year as well. So that definitely helped their case. I just don't know if Tanner Boyd is the right option at 7. I know they've got a young bloke named Thomas Weaver coming through as well. And, in our rookies video, I spoke a little bit about him and his come up. But, yeah, I just want to know if they're going to stick with Tanner Boyd long term, because I can see it not going that well early and them changing a few things up. And I think maybe Desi Hasler's just gone up to the Gold Coast for a bit of a retirement plan. Yeah, it's not exactly, high level coaching for him.
Wow. You're just dropping that in there. They've got basically an all Origin forward pack, and you're just dropping in that sort of slander against Des Hasler.
Again, none of this disruptor though.
He's going to
got an all Origin forward pack. All Origin forward pack, and it's disruptive. It doesn't necessarily translate to, a good time for Queensland teams. Look at the Broncos as well.
Look, I'm just over this slander here. So, the Warriors, mate, and the Dolphins. You can talk about one of those two teams because the Dolphins you got pretty high, the Warriors you got pretty low. What do you think?
Yeah. One thing I'd like to look at as well is, did a team get better? And I do believe that the Redcliffe Dolphins signed 2 of some of the best players from last year, especially for the Broncos, in Tommy Flegler and Herbie Farnworth. I just think that Herbie was, I would say, edged out Stephen Crichton for Centre of the Year last year. I just thought he was absolutely dynamic, so powerful runner of the ball, and he's taking that attitude that he had while the Broncos weren't actually a great team for a couple of years there. He was trying his absolute guts out every game, so that he's going to give it 110%. And then Flegler gets a bit of a bigger role this year. I expect Flegler to pick up a few minutes as well compared to his usual, with having Paddy Carrigan and Payne Haas in that rotation as well. They were using a bit of Corey Jensen, but like Flegler's the guy. You go there and he's got a bit of aging Jesse Bromwich with him. Jared Wallace is there as well. It's not, it's ripe for the picking for Flegler to come in and say, I'm the leader of this forward pack. I'm going to take you guys places. So they move up a little bit on my ladder. I don't think that they're making the 8 yet. There's a few things that you spoke about them with their halves and that kind of thing. I'm not exactly 100% sure on. So I do think they're going to be better this year, just not making the top 8.
Now, man, before we get into the top 8 here, how you been?
Mate, honestly, just been resting and recouping for the big cricket finals coming up. Actually got it down to our sponsor, the Hills Cricket Academy, earlier this week on Thursday. And we're going again this week because we loved it so much. Facing the bowling machine there, sometimes we can turn it up to 140, 150. And not that I'm facing that kind of stuff.
What setting did you have it on? Because when I was down there, I'm not a cricketer at all, right? It was terrifying, and it was on like 130.
Yeah, it's not that scary if you've played a lot of cricket. I would say, and especially when it's not short. Like if it's short, then and I can't see it, then don't give it to me. So the great thing about going there though is that our bowlers can get some reps too, because they actually have a bowling lane where you can do a run up, or for the batsman that you can just book the bowling machine and they can feed you balls. They can set it up automatically for you as well. They run intensive camps as well for programs for kids to try and get into cricket and hone your game as well. So guys, please make sure that you get down there and get into some cricket. That's what we love during summer. And
yeah, man, if you're a Sydney cricketer, the Hills Cricket Academy, they're so good. Let's run into the top 8 here, though. I want to start talking about why some of these teams are on the rise, mate.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. So some of these teams are going to win the comp. There's a couple there that I can actually see. It's North Queensland Cowboys. They'll probably go all the way.
So, mate, a traitor in our midst. You've got the Cowboys down in lowly 7th place, while I've got them sitting in 5th.
Yeah, you do. You're on for a bounce back this year. Last year, you were a bit down on them from the year before when they'd shot up to third on the ladder, you expected a bit of a downgrade. Why the sudden change this year? Is it just the hot and coldness of North Queensland for you?
It's maturation. It's maturation. So a couple of years ago, they overperformed and they were super young, and we saw that last year. We saw they sort of struggled to put it together. I'll throw some guys at you like Ruben Cotter, mixed season last year. Halen Lukey, he had a couple of fortnights of footy that were Dally M level, and then nothing else for the whole year. Luciano Leilua was in and out. Like Tommy Dearden, bit of a down year for him, but he gets made captain now. Reece Robson goes from 7 tries 2 years ago to 2 tries last year. I just sort of look at it and I go, I think that they will have learned from last year. I think they'll come in, take things a bit more seriously. I don't think they'll be starting Jake Granville at lock. As much as I love Jake Granville, that was a bit strange. So overall, I'm just looking at it, I'm thinking also the edge back rowers. A guy like Lukey, right? He's been winning a lot of the time trials and fitness trials in the preseason. They're just going to come in good this year. And look, 5th place is more a reflection of their consistency across the season rather than me thinking that they'll win the comp necessarily.
Yeah, Lukey just wants that spot, I would say, over Luciano. I think it'd be good for Luciano to potentially move back to the bench at this stage of his career. The other thing is he's in a contract year as well. I really want to keep him. Same with Kilikefu Finifuaki as well. So our back rowers, it's a good problem to have when you have so many good back rowers, but I don't want them going somewhere else and having a really good old time. But yeah, I have them down in 7th. I just think it's a bounce back year, in my opinion. I think they're going to go better than last year and make the 8 and set up a really juicy first round matchup with the Storm, who you've disrespected. The might of the Storm for you, is it over? Is it almost done? The Storm going to miss
these other teams, man. It's one of these other teams. It's such a strong comp this year. So everyone from, no offense to the Dragons and Tigers fans, but everyone from the Dragons up, I could say really nice things about all those teams. For the Storm, I just sort of look at it and I go, they rely a lot on Munster, right? And Munster statistically has sort of taken a bit of a back foot in previous years, so we might see a bit of that from him. I love Pappenhausen, but just the injuries have been pretty plaguing over the last few years. If he's fully fit, they're not nice, right? But if he's in and out, that's hard too. And the forward pack. Look at the forward pack. I think Blore.
Your man Harry Grant. Harry Grant's captain now. Yeah, it could be a different league.
Anything. Harry Grant plays like he's captain every week.
Who was the last great captain for the Melbourne Storm, and what position did he play?
You're thinking of Cameron Smith. Look, maybe, but Cameron Smith had a very good forward pack, and a forward pack that was treating the salary cap as optional at the time as well. So it's a bit different to what Harry Grant has to contend with. His team's not on the front foot as much. I just think they're going to be behind teams like we throw the Warriors in here, right? And the Warriors at 7th. I mean, you've got them at 9th, which is downright disrespectful. But even at 7th, I'm looking at them and going, they're maybe a top 4 team. They were a top 4 team last year. You throw in Roger Tuivasa-Sheck into that team.
Yeah.
You ask the question, can the other guys sort of maintain their form from last year? Last year was pretty exceptional, right? It's hard to say they replicate that, but I think they're better than the Storm. I think Souths are better as well, even with Campbell Graham being out hurt for quite a while. That's nudged them down a little bit for me. But I look at Souths and just think, that forward pack will be better this year. Cam Murray will bounce back as well. And
I agree.
Yeah, you've got Manly creeping up.
Manly, yes. I've got Manly sneaking into the 8th year there for Luke Brooks to play his first finals game. How good a story would that be? That's what I'm going for. I'm going for theatre here. I'm not a Make-A-Wish Foundation, but I would like to see Luke Brooks play finals before he retires. Like, that would be really nice. He went through years of pain, and he deserves this. Basically, my only reason for them getting up there. I think that Tommy Turbo will come back this year and play a bit more conservatively, but pick his moments a bit better. And I think he's allowed to do that this year with the signing of Brooks. I think it really helps because Brooks can take so much pressure off those guys, right? Like, can take the pressure off DCE. DCE can just say, mate, here's your role, do it to perfection and we'll be good. I just think that the way that Manly are shaping up at the moment, I really like Paseka. I like Tofoa Sipley as well off the bench. Big fan. They lose Kepi, but to me, that wasn't really a massive loss. It's really a question of who's going to play that other second rower spot outside Brooks. Is it going to be Schuster or is it going to be Ben Trebojevic? You'd want to hope that Ben Trebojevic gets better this year, that he's not exactly living up to maybe the hype of his name at this stage of his career, but he's had a few injuries, and Jake is in there as well as the stalwart in the middle. He's just going to patrol the middle and make his 40 tackles a game, and that can't go unnoticed as well. Such an unsung hero for the league, and what a good bloke as well.
They can't not pay Schuster. They can't pay Schuster what they pay him and not start him, right? Like last year, they looked at it and they went, yeah, $800K. That's what you're worth. They cannot come into this year and not give him the starting spot. Like he's played in the back row before. He's been pretty potent there. I'm not going to say good because I think defense needs work, but as far as the ball in hand, he's a dangerous player. So they've put their eggs into that basket. They got to start him. I don't.
Kohler gets another year as well. I think Kohler developing for another year really helps.
Oh yeah.
You get him some early ball, man. Like just have him running off the back of Olakau'atu's runs. He needs to be doing that a lot more. If Olakau'atu is making this enormous tackle breaking run, get in there, get in the dummy half, give him the ball early, have hopefully a broken defensive line. He can just attack it, man, because he can get there. He can sit a defender on their ass just with his footwork. And I just want to see him have a big year this year. Kohler, I think he's due for it. And Saab's just the best winger in the NRL. So that's good. Yeah,
Kohler's a freak. He's got to start believing that himself, I think, is part of that battle. The Sharks, man, you got them in 5th. And it's
purely schedule based. It's purely schedule based, mate. They're going to win. What they play 9 games against teams from outside from the top 8 last year. Like, I just think it's a bit too easy for them. Like they're gonna be that fake team that makes the 8. I actually think Manly could beat them in week 1 of the finals. I'm actually going to call that now. Manly beat them week 1 of the finals.
Is that such a specific prediction? Like you just,
yeah,
you just got to come in.
Saying, they're going to be that team that gets to the finals and is not going to be a threat like they are every year. But this year they're going to finish 5th and it's going to be fine. Yeah,
man, big call. Big call. We've also both got the Cowboys and the Storm playing in that first week. So
no,
I guess you're doing the Storm because you're a little Melbourne suck up, right?
No. I'm going to back us to go down to Melbourne and win that game.
Wow.
Yeah. Our forward is better. Yeah.
Surely you just throw that last game and if you're the Cowboys, go into 8th place, play Cronulla, the Cronulla schedulers, and Cronulla Sharks.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're getting a little bit off topic, but I think we need to maybe move to the top 4, which is always the most important part of every season. People often say that you have to finish in the top 4 to even go close to winning the comp. And you and I have some very different opinions on who is going to finish at the top of that table. And yours is I borderline need to check and on your welfare. Are you okay? Do you need mental help?
This is the year, Miles. This is the year. This is the season that Parramatta figure it out. All right. Look. I look at Parramatta last year and I go, all right, cool. That was a mess of a year. There was off-field drama. There are a lot of games lost by a few points, and there were constant injuries through that team, and they just fell short of making the 8. Right. The year before that, grand final team, flustered by the big day, but were fantastic in the lead up. Right. So I sort of think they go back to being that team this year. And if I look at this, like look at Parramatta objectively, it's a great forward pack. It's a maturing backline. It's a halves pairing in their absolute prime. And you get a season where the hooker, whether it's Hands or Lussick, they're going to get that full season of preparation as well. If we've learned anything from the Panthers last year too, look, they had Mitch Kenny at hooker. They came in and everyone was talking about Sonny Luke being that explosive guy. Sometimes you just need that stable hooker who plays to your more talented playmakers in the halves or at fullback. So, yeah, for me, Parramatta, I think it's going to be a big year for the boys. I think that they might make a few mid-season signings at some point as well. And I just think that their
Yeah.
roster is geared towards, man, look, I'm telling the truth, geared towards not being affected by Origin like the Panthers, Roosters, or Broncos will be. I'm saying also with a straight face. Straight face.
I'll let you say whatever you want there to try and weasel your way out of this one. I don't know how you're going to explain it.
No weaseling.
Aren't you meant to be a fantasy? You're meant to be a fantasy expert. You got the para anyway. Just para doing para things is the thing that I can't get away from. They lose the games they probably shouldn't, and then win the games that they probably shouldn't as well. So they'll play great against Melbourne, the Panthers. I bet you they beat the Broncos at some point this year when they're not meant to. Like they'll probably have a few guys out, and then they'll just put 40 on the Broncos, and you'll be like, "Where did that come from? Why can't we see that every week?"
You know where it came from? Just because they're doing every week. Because they're the minor.
I just think there's still a little bit of grand final hangover. They got belted in a grand final. Basically, got told you're not ready for this stage, and last year they didn't back it up at all. And it's still coming back to, for me, the fact they haven't sorted out who the hooker is going to be long term, because it's not Brandon Hands. Like we saw it last year. Like Brandon Hands, like yeah, he's fine, but Marnie, losing Marnie is still hurting them, and I think it's going to hurt them for a couple of years, because I just think it was this. When I saw it, I thought it was the stupidest thing that Parra had done for years, because that had been their problem for so many years. They had guys like Matt Keating, and not saying that these guys aren't okay players, but they weren't Reed Marnie level. That Marnie offered so much to Mitch Moses and had a really good relationship going with them at the time that saw them.
Let me throw it at you, because let's look at your top three teams. We can go down this list, but Panthers, it's Mitch Kenny. Roosters, it's Brandon Smith, and it was Jake Turpin a lot last year. But Broncos, it's Billy Walters. I don't feel like Hooker's important, but it's not. If you've got a halves pairing that controls the game and a fullback that can play make a bit, actually a lot of the good teams don't have great hookers right now.
What they do have is hookers who give good service, and Marnie was borderline the best in the comp at doing that. He gave the ball to Mitch Moses when he wanted it, and that was Mitch's biggest problem last year. He wasn't getting the ball when he wanted to, especially from Josh Hodgson. Like the Josh Hodgson thing was terrible for the first couple of weeks. Would you agree with me in saying that? Their first couple of weeks with Josh Hodgson was just terrible. Like Hodgson was running off being like, "Oh, I'm Josh Hodgson from 2019." No, you're not, mate.
Man, Hodgson 2019, though, that was a guy. That was a guy. Like, exactly. What a player. What a player.
He was a legend.
He was almost the best hooker at the time.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think he may have won Dally M Hooker of the Year. I can't remember, but it may be. Fact check me on that, guys, in the comments if I'm wrong there. But definitely went close to doing that. But yeah, I just think it's guys who give really good service. And then, Brandon Smith offers something different for the Roosters. I think Sonny Luke and Mitch Kenny, like you can't say that Penrith didn't figure it out last year, because they did. Somehow, I think you had them finishing outside the top 4 last year from our ladder predictions. I can't remember, but it was definitely didn't have a win.
Every team in the comp just was pathetic. Like the last year, you look at Parramatta and they fell apart. The Roosters were disgusting. South Sydney were absolutely dreadful. They were first after like 11 rounds, and they just didn't win a game after that and fell out of the top 8. Like Penrith winning the comp last year, it was an impressive comp win, but they should not have won that, and it was really a sign of the weakness of the competition last year. The Broncos were the one team who sort of stood up to them, and that game could have gone either way, that grand final. So I still do think, I think the Panthers could slide down this list, but they are consistent, whereas the Chooks, you just know the Chooks are going to go through a month-long stretch where they lose a bunch of games to the Dolphins in round 1 last year, and those types of teams, right? But no, I just think Parramatta get it done. Like the play here is, look, Hodgson was the hooker all preseason, and then they dropped Hands in, and they dropped Lussick in. Obviously, it's not going to look great. You get a whole preseason with a hooker, and if your job is very simple, I think you're going to be okay. Look, I'll throw to you, man, because we've got Broncos, Chooks, Panthers sort of floating around there. Why do you think we both have the Chooks moving up this list?
For me, their schedule got a lot easier this year. Plus, they can't have the amount of injury luck that they've had over the last couple of years. And I also think Brandon Smith getting another off-season really helps them figure out the hooker situation. Plus, they also added Spencer Leniu and Dom Young. I think those are two very good ins, especially Dom Young. He was electric last year, scored 20-plus tries, and you can't keep him out of the team. They're going to be losing a bit this year as well, so I expect guys like Manu and Suali'i to probably give it their all before they go off to other contracts. Like I think Manu's going to French rugby. I read the other day as well. So
good on him, man. He's enjoying his life. That's
getting that money.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had a bit of an off year last year. I know because I had him in Supercoach, and that drove me insane. So it was just a bit of a up and down year for the Roosters, and I expect Trent to get him back on the same playing field. And the halves still is a bit of an issue for me. I do think that Keary and Walker possibly not the best combination to go with, but I think Sandon Smith actually showed last year.
They're both sixes, man. That's the problem. I don't know. I think they sort of figured it out though. Down the stretch of last year, like James Tedesco, he was fantastic last 2 months of footy. You got this back line where I don't know if Dan Tupou is going to make the team personally. So I look at the back line and I think it might go Dom Young and Joe Suali'i as your wingers. Because Suali'i and Dom Young, they're both arguably top 5 wingers in the comp. Whereas Tupou's fantastic career. He's an all-time great, but compared to those guys this year, it's hard for him to measure up. And he's not a center, whereas Billy Smith and Joey Manu.
Billy Smith and Manu, it's a scary center pairing. Like
they just re-signed Billy Smith for 3 years too. So are they going to sit him in reserve grade?
Good for him, because he's had so much injury trouble. I love to see Billy Smith.
He'll have his day. Billy Smith will have his day, man. But I do agree with you. Like you look at Gus Crichton, he's going to be leaving at the end of the year as well, I believe. Whereas I know Suo Wong, he was rock solid last year. Nat Butcher was rock solid last year. I don't know about like Tupanua, sort of in and out last year, but the forward rotation gets a bit stronger as well. I think Terrell May could be a guy who makes the leap for them too. He looked very good.
Yeah, they've also got a young guy in developments he's another back rower called Celesi Fiketti as well. So you could see an appearance from him later this year if they have so many injuries in the second rowers. They've got 4 that I can think of at the moment with Gus Crichton, Nat Butcher, Tupanua and Wong, as you spoke about. But yeah, you're right. The forward rotation did get a bit better. And I think Spencer is basically coming in to replace Jared Waerea-Hargreaves when he eventually moves on. I think Spencer could end up starting at some point this year.
That's a big call.
Jared's got 1 year left. Like this is 1 year for Jared as well.
Do you think Spencer's a starter?
Not at the moment, no. He'd need to show me more. He'd need to show me more work rate, just because I think coming off the bench, all he has to do is take those really hard runs for about 25 minutes, and then he's off again. That's
what I was going to say too. It's change of game. People ask him about him in fantasy, and like he just has shown nothing to demonstrate that he's going to be that big minute forward, which is fine. Like not everyone needs to be that big minute forward. The reason he was picked for Origin is because he's not that guy. And you can give him 30 minutes a game and he can have an impact in that 30 minutes. That's a great skill to have. But replacing Waerea-Hargreaves, he was 50 to 60 minutes a game in his prime and maintained that enforcer energy through that time as well. So, yeah, I don't know. I think they need to play Gus Crichton in the middle a bit. Connor Watson, I believe, is still there as well. Confirm if I'm wrong. Yeah, so Connor Watson had a bit of leg speed in the middle. Radley had a bit of an up and down year. I think they're going to be all right.
They lost Drew Hutchison. They lost the next Mitch Orbison in Drew Hutchison.
Some people want him to start Drew Hutchison at the Dogs, but like Broncos then, because I've got the Broncos a little lower than you, but do you think they're a title threat this year, right? Because we can say they're going to come 4th or 3rd, whatever it is, but are they a team where if they get into the finals, we're saying, that team can win the comp again, or are the losses too great?
They did. You're right. That's where it all starts for me. Is did they get worse? And I believe they did. I think losing Flegler and Herbie, who were such big parts of that grand final run last year, is going to hurt initially at the start of the season. I think it may take Cobbo, who I think is moving to center, a few games to adjust there, and then You bring in some more inexperienced guys to the rotation in the forwards. It could upset things with Piakura moving into that Capewell spot. He could take some time. So there's a couple of pieces that need to come together. But if they get it going again, I definitely think that they can be, one of the title threats this year and make a charge.
Could I counter you here? There's a few guys who have been in great form in the preseason. And by the preseason, I mean the one preseason game they've had so far. But Mariner was very good in that game the other day. Very good. He's a super explosive guy. He's the kind of guy who could look really good on the end of this Broncos backline. I look at Xavier Willison. Fantastic work rate as far as a bench forward goes. He just has all the tangible traits, the size, the speed, everything there that he needs. I think we see a breakout from Xavier Willison this year. And then Ben Takura, he might be a year behind Xavier in terms of his development, but he's another guy, right? You talked about him on your video. That's actually part of how I really have faith in him. But I sort of look at him and go, right, you know what? If there's a spot where a young forward who's got the talent can shine, it's playing behind Pat Carrigan and Payne Haas, right? There is no better set where if you come on and you're the third forward out of those two, the runs you take are going to be that little bit easier, and you're just going to look that little bit better, and you get a little more confidence. I just think they're going to be able to fill these gaps. But yeah, you're right. It could take time. So I've got them in fourth there. But they've been so good at developing talent, even like Herbie Farmworth. You throw Cobbo. You throw in
Jesse Arthurs is solid as well. I think they've still got Oates there, who's been part of the club for years. I think he might actually get the starting winger spot, which
I don't want to do that.
Neither here nor there.
Give it to Mariner. But
I think they should also give it to Mariner. But
like Stags, Ricky,
Cobbo.
Mate, all these guys, they're all guys who have been homegrown and debuted at the club between 2018 and 2022.
Yep.
So they're good at bringing these guys in and getting them up to speed pretty quick. So I think they could be that team that has a shot.
I also think that they should give potentially some of their up-and-coming players a bit more of a go. I talked about Blake Moser last year, and I didn't have him in my rookies video this year either because it just seemed that Billy Walters locked down that number 9 spot. However, if Billy Walters were to go down for some reason or Walters is thinking about changing up the rotation a little bit more, I think Moser needs to be the guy to come in, not Corey Pakes. Do you agree with me on that one?
Yeah, I'd like to see Moser get a shot. The feedback I got from his trial the other day, because I watched parts of it, but I chatting to someone who was watching a lot more closely. He had great delivery, but just wasn't really offering that spark that they were sort of hoping to see from him. So, I don't know. I think he's got upside. Billy Walters he's sort of proven a lot of people wrong recently. Again, it's a great forward pack, so you look a bit better than you are. But yeah, it's a bit of a tricky spot for them. I think they can trust Walters, which is the big thing. The other thing I'll throw in here is, do you think, because Ezra Mam, right? Ezra Mam is awesome, but we go from last year where it was like he's an exciting rookie and he's a super potent attacking player. I now come into this season and sort of go, all right, cool. You've gotten your big contract now. You're getting that top tier money. You're being paid like Cody Walker. Let's see you play like Cody Walker every week. And the reason for that likeness is if you're going to be that explosive 6, Cody Walker is the best in the game at that role. Absolutely is. Like in terms of creating try assists and creating attacking opportunities, he's number 1. So can Ezra Mam evolve into that player? Still young. I'm not giving any heat right now, but if he can become that guy, that makes him a different team as well.
Yeah, it was the emergence of a superstar in that grand final, wasn't it? For him to go out there and score a hat trick in a grand final was just absolutely outstanding to watch. And he basically had a Clive Churchill stolen from him in the final minutes there. With Ezra, I just think it's been a constant development of his game. First year he came in, he played a few games, had a bit of attacking spark, but he couldn't really defend. Last year, he was actually very solid in defense, and I really loved his connection with Reece Walsh. They have played so much footy together, and you can tell just because of the connection that they have. They're a constant threat with their speed, especially. Both of them are very quick at their positions, like for the fullback position and especially off the mark for outside center, for center and second row combination to deal with. It's going to be very difficult every week.
The goalposts move. The goalposts move when you get $1 million contract, right? Is
It
he
does, yeah.
like if you just looked at this season, this upcoming season, is he going to live up to that contract this year? Is my question to you.
No. Kind of like I expect him to have a bit of a year that kind of David Fafita had in his year when he initially went on to the $1 million contract. It's tough to live up to because people are always going to say you don't deserve it, right? Unless you play out of your skin and you get Dalian Medal of the Year and have like a 10-week run like Kalen Ponga, it's so hard to live up to. And for a young man to have that much pressure on him, I think it's a bit unfair, but it's also they've set a standard of making the grand final, and I think that they've got to live up to that.
Yeah, no, I look at it too. I think for mine, like if Adam Reynolds is out and you're that $1 million half, you got to be able to take the team on your back a bit, right? So again, we talk about Cody Walker, but he lost Adam Reynolds, and he's maintained his level of quality. So that's going to be really interesting to see. I'm not saying he will or he won't with Ezra Mem, but I'm just excited to see what they see in him and how they develop him, because they obviously see him as a future Dalian Player of the Year. So it's pretty exciting. But look, that's my top 8, man.
Do we talk about the one team that we haven't talked about, and that is Penrith, essentially? We talked about the team that finished second last year, and I think that Penrith, maybe we can't go past them without being mentioned. I've got them finishing at the top this year, and I think they make the grand final again. And I know it's something that no one wants to hear, but it's based on what you were saying earlier, actually, do I think a lot of the comp has gotten better? No, I don't. I think that Penrith are going to be exactly the same position, and that will lead them to being in that grand final race again.
Yeah, I mean, the middle is crowded. That's what I'm going to say, right? So I think a lot of the bottom teams have really stepped up. And I look at teams like the Titans, the Seagulls, the Knights back in the last year, the Dolphins. These teams, their fans have a lot of reason for hope in terms of the next couple of years. But yeah, you're right. There's contending teams other than Parramatta who are going to go to first place. The contending teams are looking a little dicey here and there. For Penrith, you lose Stephen Crichton, and in big games, he's been very important. So you lose him, you lose Zach Hosking as well, who again last year was very important for them. Jamin Salmon, I don't think really moved the needle much for them personally.
Don't know if you needed to mention Jamin Salmon there, but yeah.
Look, I'm just rattling off some guys, but I don't know. For Penrith, I mean, you lose Luai at the end of this year. I could see his mentality being, you know what I mean, sort of a bit all over the place.
You could go one or two ways, right?
Really badly. What?
Yeah, it could go one or two ways, right? Like it's either this is my last year, I'm going to give it everything, or I've got my money set up. That's
and maybe maybe he gets some heat at some point. He says, "Well, fuck you guys, I'm taking off anyway." Like, I don't know. There's a lot of pieces here in this, but then I look at the other parts of this and I go, "All right, Isaac Tungo, he's going to different levels. I really like him, and you throw in like a Paul Alamotti for the depth.
Taylor May comes back to
Taylor May, they might become a bit more of an explosive, high-scoring team with some of the roster changes they've got there. Because I think they could be exciting, a bit more exciting to watch this year. I've got them second. I've got their
carrying on
there. Like they're a great team. They're an all-time great team. I don't love them myself, but I've got to respect them, and that's why I got them there.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we do every year, who's making the grand final for you and who's winning it at the end of the day?
Can you answer first? I've got to give this some thought now.
Yeah. Sure. No worries, man. I actually think it's going to be a Penrith Roosters grand final. And I think the Panthers win a 4th premiership in a row, which would just be, very boring, but like great for Panthers fans and unprecedented. I don't think anyone thought in the modern era that 3 could be won in a row. 4 just sounds absolutely ridiculous. Barring any serious injury, I can't see any reason as to why they wouldn't win it again.
Okay, I'm going to take the Eels and the Broncos to go through at the end. And it probably doesn't make sense with the ladder setup I've got there, but who cares? I just think the Broncos figure it out down the stretch. I think they have this last year with Adam Reynolds. I don't know how long that lasts past this year. And I think Parramatta figure it out this year and they go all the way and win the comp. So that might be a bit more hopeful.
So
for me,
you heard it.
but,
You heard it here first, guys.
well,
You heard it here first, guys. Parramatta to break a 38-year drought this year. Longy, thank you so much for joining me in our ladder predictions this year. I can't thank you enough for that. Please make sure that you like and subscribe to our videos, guys. We bring out so much content each and every week. Longy has so much great fantasy stuff. So if you're into your fantasy, go and look at all of that stuff. I'll be getting into some tipping videos later this month as well, guys. So stay tuned for that. And we'll catch you on the next one. Right, Longy?
peace out, guys.